Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV with me, your host Phil Leonard.
And I'm your host, Josh Summersgill.
Just before we kick off today's podcast, I'd just like to thank our sponsor, xendurance.eu. Xendurance currently offering a fantastic Fuel 5 product, which is basically a carbohydrate drink that will allow you to keep your glycogen levels tops up and perform for longer. I feel like that's a super appropriate thing to promote today because we have got the endurance specialist on, Mr. Chris Hinshaw. I'm going to really quickly pass it over to Chris. I wanted to introduce him as the coach to 30 CrossFit Games champions, and I just don't feel like I'll do him as much justice as Chris will do himself. So, Chris, explain, just for our listeners who are unaware who you are, and the rest of them, I'm sure a lot of them know who you are. Explain what you do in the CrossFit realm at the moment, if you could.
So I'm really a coach into the CrossFit space. I specialize in longer time domains, endurance type programming, but in every type of a movement. So most people, when they think of endurance, they think of running, biking, swimming. But in reality, endurance is looking at longer time domains of movement. And so that's really what makes my job and my opportunity exciting, is that CrossFit is really, these coaches in the space are experts in movement, and to have the luxury of targeting long time domains in movement is where I specialize, and that's what makes it so enjoyable versus just a sport-specific movement such as running.
Awesome. And you, like I say, you're the coach to you coach lots of CrossFit Games athletes. And before we get into that, I just want to know about, because I feel like the story is super important and a really good message. And I've heard the story before, but can you just tell us how you actually got into CrossFit and that experience of the first time you went to a gym?
You guys come out hot.
My bad.
Well, you guys have been to the seminar, and so the only time I ever tell this story is so this story. I only tell it in the aerobic capacity seminar, and the reason is so I visited Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet. I wanted to go and hang out with her, and then my better half Heidi wanted to just go to Boulder, Colorado, and hang with them for New Year's. And Matt and Sheree Chan were there, and I'm also friendly with Brian Jean Tosh, and Nicole Carroll, head of CrossFit training, and they all happen to be in the same area. And so we decided, why not just fly from San Francisco to Denver and hang out? Well, in order to pay for the trip, I said, and this was back in 2015, what I'll need to do is I'll need to book a seminar at CrossFit Roots. And so what we did is we decided to do our seminar, which was, a 4-hour seminar at Roots to help subsidize the trip. Well, the night before the seminar, we're all having dinner, all of us. So there's 8 of us, and Nicole Carroll's there. And she turns and she says, I was supposed to fly back to California in the morning, but I just extended my trip, and I'm going to come to your course. And she's just a friend. And so I'm like, that sounds amazing. I was so excited that my friend wants to come. Like, that's great. And so Tosh was coming, and then I was leaving dinner, and Heidi and I are walking with Matt and Sheree Chan, and both on seminar staff. And, Sheree is an icon as well. And Sheree says to me, she says, Nicole Carroll's coming to your course. And I know, I'm so excited. I told her, I'm like, that's awesome. And she's like, if I was you, I would be like pooping in my pants right now. Like, this is Nicole Carroll. She's going to sit in the back of the class and write notes the entire time. You should be terrified. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden, like a fun event went to like this anxiety. And the truth was, is so she came and she sure did. She sat in the back and took notes. She participated the entire time. We did some workouts. We had 28 people there, and right afterwards, and in there, I told this story of my first time walking in the gym, but right afterwards, she comes up, like straight up, I see her, and she comes running around the side and comes right in front. And she says, that seminar was one of the best I've ever been to, ever. Wow. And she says, the way in which you started it out and talking about your first day going into CrossFit took the edge away. That there was a lot of anxiety because people don't know what you're about to take them through. And when you humbled yourself at the start, that always must be in there. You always must. She says, it made me tear up. Like it needs to always. And I don't like the story because it was a sad moment. Right. But, yeah. And so that's where it started from. And right. Yeah, funny that it's interesting, the people that shape you, and it's the ones that you respect. And it's like, I don't like the story, but you know what? I really do like you and respect you. And so I'm going to always do that. And so I always have. Yeah. And yeah. So yeah, that story, oh boy. I mean, we all have our first time going into CrossFit, and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The difference is that, you know, I had done the sport of triathlons and I was pretty good at it. You know, when the gods came down and handed out, you know, genetic gifts, I got a bunch of them. Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, in the zombie apocalypse, I'm dying for sure. I may be able to run a long amount of time, but I won't be able to hunt and kill.
I think you got Rich thrown in to back you up there, so yeah, it's fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah. So when I was doing the sport of triathlons, I was good because, you know, I mean, I trained hard. I was super committed to the sport, and I raced professionally for 6 years. The thing is that I was also genetically given, you know, large lung. My lungs are 50% larger than normal. I had a VO2 max in the movement of running of 89 milliliters per kilogram per minute. My body fat back then was 3.6%. I've had biopsies in my arms and my legs. I'm 88% slow twitch. I'm made for moving fast for a long amount of time. It's an unfair advantage, really, which it's amazing that all those things came together. So because of those things, I had a bunch of success in the sport. And that's what I brought into the gym that day. So here I was, you know, it was in 2008. So I was in my mid 40s, and I had not done any form of exercise in 12 years because I couldn't. The sport of triathlons, the volume that I did, it just took its toll on me. It was, you know, the volumes that I was doing was just, it was incredible. And what's so crazy is I would do Olympic distance triathlons on a Saturday and then do a 6-mile run that evening because that race wasn't enough work.
Wow.
And I did that year over year over year. And eventually, you know, it just took its toll. And I went to the original CrossFit mothership space, you know, Santa Cruz Central, SoCal Research Park there in SoCal, California. And I was invited to go there by Annie Sakamoto, one of the original CrossFit girls. I ran into her in a business meeting in Santa Cruz, and she took up an interest in me in the sense that she was fascinated by what I had done. And I was kind of curious on this CrossFit, and, you know, what she said. And what her words were is that you did a lot of training, a lot, but it was the same movement patterns, the same muscle groups over and over and over again. And I would encourage you to come into our gym, and what we'll do is we're going to strengthen those neglected muscle groups and make you functional. And so that was cool, like words that resonated, like functional, like, wow, because that's all I wanted. I don't want to compete. I just don't want to have my left side of my body operate differently than the right side of my body. Yeah. And so I eventually worked up the interest to drive over there, which is from my house to Santa Cruz Central. It was an hour. And I had set up a meeting to work with a private trainer there. Her name was Sherry Keener, and amazing. I don't have enough nice things to say. She's just incredible, and the way in which she took me in. But that first day, when I pull into the parking lot and you're there at that gym, you pull into a parking lot and the gym is behind you. So you can just turn over your shoulder in the car and look and see inside the gym. And they have a series of roll-up doors that allows you full access inside to see, and their pull-up bars are in the roll-up door. And their 9 o'clock class was finishing, and I remember only seeing women there that day. I'm sure there was men, but I just remember the women, and I remember saying to myself, wow, like, it's incredible how strong like you can get. Because my exposure to gym training was, you know, I had been in a gym, but I never really lifted weights. It was one of the things, it was a mistake. In hindsight, I could have been a better triathlete with what I know today and asking questions. And I never had a finishing sprint, for example. I didn't have speed, closing kick. You know, I just, you know, create my kick at about 5K out because I would lose if I came down to, you know, the last 30 seconds. And so I had been in a gym, and I knew like plates were made out of metal, and I knew if those metal plates, you know, were laying flat on a floor, it was like they were suctioned to the floor. I just knew things as being heavy. And so I saw these women doing a ground overhead with the barbell, and they had 45-pound bumper plates on there, but I didn't know it was rubber. I just looked at it from my car leaning over my shoulder, and I'm like, that's gotta be 500 pounds is what I estimated, because each one of those plates,
big, aren't they?
yeah, so it's got to be like three of the 45, you know, 3 of the 45 metals like on there. So that's got to be like 200, and then 200 on the other side. The bar's got to weigh 100. And what was crazy was, it's like they were dropping it, you know, from overhead, and it would bounce. And I'm like, I mean, this is how naive I was. It was like, wow, like they really have like a special floor, because that's dangerous. And this isn't, because I saw metal bouncing for the first time, like 500 pounds, it bounces. And I'm like, wow. And then they did pull-ups, and they weren't just doing one. And I had never done a pull-up before. And they were doing thousands of them. And it was the most violent, like they were kipping. But to me, it was like, as a swimmer, that kipping pull-up, the reason why my shoulders are so messed up is because when swimmers swim, they rotate in the water. And when they rotate and their hand just enters the water, they create an impingement at the top of the shoulder. Well, a kipping pull-up is the same motion. There is no way on earth I was ever going to attempt something like that, because my shoulders were so delicate that day that I would have broken my whole arm off, meaning like separated it, and my arms would just be hanging from the bar. Like that's how bad my shoulders were. And so and they were doing thousands of them. The whole building was shaking. I just was so like, I was trying, you know, when you see something and your brain is trying to catch up with what you're seeing, because it goes against everything that you have thought was reality.
Yeah.
And so here I was bringing into the gym these incredible accomplishments over a really good career in the sport of triathlons. And that's who I believed I still was. Even though I hadn't done any, you know, training in 12 years, I believed in my heart that I'm a badass and I am not intimidated by anybody. And I'll go into any place and just put the hammer down. Well, when you're trying to take who you think you are, and you're watching women lifting 500 pounds overhead and doing 1,000 push-ups, it's like you're trying to reconcile what is happening. And then for the first time, I felt fear. I was like, wow, I am really genuinely afraid. And that was a heart-wrenching moment for me, because the person who I thought I wasn't actually who I am. And I had to recognize that person is gone. That person that was not intimidated by people, that one that really took enjoyment in throttling himself, because the proof is that, you know what, I'm going to perform well again because I always perform well. And that day I realized that, you know what, that's over. That person is gone.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the class, the women all came together, and it was like I started up the car and I backed out and I drove home. And you know, if I've ever had a midlife crisis, that could have been about the time, because what I'm doing is I'm driving home and reconciling the person who I am. And that is a really difficult thing, that the things that you always believed that you were are not true. And I had to deal with that. I made myself go back the next day, and, you know, I've been committed ever since. You know, I'm a strong supporter of CrossFit because of what it did for me. Just as Andy Sakamoto said, it strengthened my neglected muscle groups, and it allowed me to become functional. And I mean, you guys have seen me run, and the thing is I don't have any aches and pains. You know, I just turned 57 3 days ago, and I'm fast. I can run. I'm not the strongest in the gym, but that's because of genetics. But the fact is that I am as capable, if not more capable, than I ever have. And the only thing that I did was follow a CrossFit protocol of doing well-rounded fitness. And I'm grateful for that. I really am grateful that and that's a life lesson, right? Of recognizing fear that all people have in coming into a gym, but also recognizing that I also could have been better. And I take those two things as a coach, and I apply it towards anybody that walks in the door. Yeah. That we have a limited amount of time, and I don't want to waste that time. I want to educate you. I want you to understand the purpose and the reasoning that this is the highest and best use of your time, because this moment will pass and we'll never get it back again. And that's where regret and thinking back on my career is important. But it's also recognition that, you know what, there are people like me that life got in the way and they lost their fitness. And now it's like a 12-year-old boy has just walked into the gym and he's terrified. Yeah. And there's no difference between a 12-year-old boy and a 44-year-old man who has no fitness.
I think with CrossFit as well, and like just because the way the boxes look, and so you roll up to a warehouse, like they say, the roller shutter doors up, you've got people with no clothes on. Like you say, you've got strong, fit women throwing 500 pounds overhead on a sprung floor. It's going to be intimidating, and I think it's good for people to hear that even people like yourself, coming from that kind of obviously endurance background, and you was a high performer in that sort of sport, to come to CrossFit and be like, oh my God, I am terrified. I mean, I think my dad's a good example, because he's like into running, cycling, endurance stuff like that. He openly says to me that it scares him coming into our gym. Do you know what I mean? And like we do exactly like what we can to obviously help that, but it's just part of the nature of what it is, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like people coming to the aerobic capacity seminar, there's a question, like expectations. And a lot of times when you read that, it's people are afraid, and they're expressing their concern in hopes that, that I don't damage them in some way. And that always, to me, it's important to have as a coach that sensitivity, because, I always tell people, it's like anybody could write a workout that smashes people. That's not difficult to do. The thing is what you want to do is you want to do a workout that challenges people, but also inspires them to want to come back. Yeah. And that's the hard balance. How do you do that?
And I think so the reason I first of all wanted to ask you about, because your story resonated with me so much when I first heard it. I was like, wow, okay. And by no means was an Ironman competitor. My story is a little bit different. And I actually don't think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but basically I was, 120 kilograms, and it wasn't muscle.
Big Philly, Big Philly himself.
They don't call me Big Philly because of where I'm at now. That's
wow.
But I went to CrossFit when I thought I was fit. So I got there, and I started playing rugby, things like that, and I was the fit person on my rugby team. I was the guy that went to the gym and did the fitness and all the rest of it, and I'd lost weight. I was in good shape. So I rocked up to CrossFit thinking, I was like, right, I'm going to be dead good at this. And I was not, like as per everybody that first starts CrossFit. And I was literally, the second session going in, I was like you said, petrified. I was like, I don't know what's coming here. Like, am I going to be able to do it? And I think everybody has that moment. And then obviously 10 years on, your life can be so different and changed just by including a well-rounded fitness program in your diet. You know what I mean?
But I find that, Phil, like what you're saying, I mean, that's the thing that CrossFit is able to do, is that, like you said, there's at some point you recognize that you're not all what you thought you were, and you become insecure. And as you progress, you start creating this level of confidence in yourself. And that's what I think every one of us wants, is we don't want to walk in this world and being afraid. But where are you going to find confidence? And the reality is that you have to make that yourself. Like what you experienced in sticking with it, you ultimately created this self-confidence. And that is such a hard thing to do in the world, is where are you going to find it? You know, like it's not in your day job, because every day you're being questioned on your direction, your ideas, and you know, creating, you know, great work product. So where are you going to find that? Who's going to be, and it's not just words, it's got to be a fact. Like, and that's what it, like, that's why your story is so beautiful. It's like, it's very clear that you created confidence for yourself, and that makes you better.
Yeah, and Josh will be the first one to tell you I am not short on confidence anymore. That's for certain. But no, like, but I think people will see, like, 10 times Ironman competitor, coach to CrossFit Games athletes. People see gym owner, and again, like, Josh is naturally good at everything, so he's probably not experienced it the same way me and you did.
No, honest to God, right? I think that's, I wouldn't say worse, because it isn't at all. But I think the problem you're going to have, like, the problem that I had when I first started CrossFit is I come from, like Phil said, I have this ability to pick things up quite easily. And when I started CrossFit, I didn't. You can't pick up fitness easily. Does that kind of make sense? Obviously, Chris, you'll know a lot more about this, being a specialist and stuff like that. But like, you can't go from being aesthetically, obviously, because we come from like a bodybuilding kind of background, you can't come from that and expect after 2 weeks to be aerobically fit. It doesn't work, does it? And obviously, I was naive. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do a bit of this CrossFit. I think I'm fit. And I wasn't. I got my ass handed to me. I did Nancy with a PVC pipe. I had a paddy. It was horrendous, because I thought I was so much better than I actually was.
It took you 12 months to come back, didn't it?
It was a while.
I
think you have to learn that, don't you?
Yeah.
Like you say, you think you're somewhere, and then it takes that to bring you back down to earth, and you come back up, and like you're so much better off from having that. Because you're a lot more humble. You're like, I'm not a master of anything. I mean, I'm always learning. I can always get better.
But that's what's so cool, is that it's not that, take for example, like pull-ups. It's not that a coach sits there and says, you know, I know you want to learn how to do pull-ups and kipping pull-ups, and I know that you have a goal of doing 20 of them and you can't do one yet. They're not going to sit there and go, you know, it's going to take you a long time just to develop your grip. What they're doing is they're providing a daily experience each time that you come in, but it's your journey. It's like you're the one that's inside your head solving these problems. And that's what's the magic of it, is that it's not that they're putting up these barriers and saying like, you know what, I know you want to do these goals, but you know, it's time to pump the brakes because your grip will never survive.
Yeah.
And that's not what's happening. Part of that journey is you figure those things out along the way. And that's super cool. I remember my mom is, she was born in 1937. And we were over at her house. There's, 19 kids and grandkids. And we were over at her house. And my mom does yoga, every day. And she can do handstand holds like nobody's business. And
awesome.
Brilliant.
In CrossFit, we all know that, people possess a magic superpower, right? There's something that they just dominate in, even though they may not be able to jump up, onto a 45-pound plate. They can do, like my mom can do a 4-minute handstand hold. Wow. And so I had been practicing like doing, like handstand holds and stuff. And so at their house, they have a long hallway. It's probably 15 meters long. And I said to my mom, and everything when I grew up was a competition because my brother, my 2 sisters, they all did Ironman, my dad, the whole family was very competitive all the time. So here we are, we're over there for Christmas. This is maybe 5 years ago. And I go, Mom, I want to challenge you to a handstand hold against the wall. And here she is, she's like 78. But I got to beat her. Like, to me, it's like, she's just another one I got to take down. And so she's like, she's like, all right, I'll do it. Well, next thing you know, my older sister jumps in and then my 3 nephews jump in and there's like 14 of us down the hallway and my dad's got a stopwatch and, it's like, it was like a full competition. And so my dad's like, okay, and he does the countdown and then we all kick up. Well, a couple of the kids who are like 4 years old fall, right away. But I'm looking down and I'm like, wow, we're a minute in and there's still like 7 people up on the wall who have never done a handstand hold. And I'm like, and I know I can only go to about 1 minute and 40 seconds. Like, I know that's like, was legit. And so we're at like 1:15 and a couple more fall. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, like they're not coming down. And I see my nephew, who is an Olympic trial swimmer. He's up on the wall, my mom and my sister, and then me at 1:30. I get to 1:45, and when your arms just give and you just pile drive your neck into the ground? Well, that's what happened to me. Like, and as soon as I fell, like my mom went a little bit, and my nephew, and then my mom, and then my sister like went, and she was the longest. And my dad, he's like, you didn't even podium. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you got 4th. You got 4th place. You couldn't even podium against like, and it was like, wow. Like, but that's what happens in the gym. Like you learn to keep quiet because you're going to get throttled by a 78-year-old. And I've never done it ever again with her. It's like, you can have that one. You're the best.
That's CrossFit. That is your first experience at CrossFit. You get your ass handed to you by a 78-year-old woman. That is how it works.
And the thing was I was so confident that I was, didn't even podium.
That reminds me of one of, and Josh will love this because one of our members, Johnny, he's huge. Like, so he's built and he's covered in tattoos from literally neck down. He looks hard as nails. He's not. He's a big softy, but he looks hard as nails.
He's like his biceps right here. He's like...
yeah. And the first time he come to the gym, he come to a 9:30 class, and our 9:30 class is basically. I don't want to offend anyone, but most of them are over 50. And female.
What he calls it, cheese and wine club.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good class.
Great.
It's a great class. I love coaching that class. But he got whooped all day. And they were doing handstand push-ups and all these like 50-year-old women are doing handstand push-ups and he's he's like struggling doing them strict and all kinds of
But things. It was for time as well. So obviously everyone else had finished. They're like, come on, Johnny, keep going, mate. And he's just on the floor. He's like, what is going on?
I love telling people that experience because obviously our members and the people who know us who know Johnny will know that how that affected him. And like you say, so I think everyone's got that story about CrossFit. It's so relatable. So, Chris, one thing I wanted to ask you about as well, and your like, I feel like your knowledge on endurance is like obviously way up there, better than Matt Fraser has even referred to you as like next level. So, if Matt Fraser calls somebody next level, I think we've all got to agree that you're pretty good. But I think that your real gift and ability is to actually convey those messages and the things you know in ways that people understand. Is that something that you like actively went out and cultivated and was like, okay, I need to be able to get people to understand me, or is it something that just come naturally to you?
So that's a great question. So I actually, that's taken a long time to figure out how to connect with people so that they understand. I've always felt that everyone should understand the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. I've always believed that. And sometimes athletes come in and you don't have answers, you know, like Fraser, one of the things that 4 years ago he came and he says, how can you help me win on the assault bike? Like, how can you help me win? And, you know, the thing is that I was able to answer that question, but if you're sitting there and you're asked that by a member of your gym, like, how can we work on it? I think the mistake a lot of coaches make is they feel compelled to give some answer that might even be wrong. And that's where I have learned along the way that I want to give accurate information, but it needs to be relatable. And the test is that, so say, for example, just a real quick answer on what I told Fraser, the test really is what I'm about to explain to you. Are you able to take this, how do I win on the assault bike, and tell a third party in your own words and get them to understand it? And their ability to understand is the same standard, meaning they've got to take what you've said and be able to tell somebody. That's the test. Yeah. And so if it's too technical, they're not going to be able to use that piece of information. You have to find a way to convey information so that it resonates, so that it's relatable and it sinks into them and they can then pull on it. And so, as you know, I tell a lot of what we call stories in the seminar, but they're really actually case studies. And I learned that from business school, like looking at case studies and looking at real life examples, because you remember the case study. You may not remember what I said, but you do remember the story or the case study I told you about pacing and Jason Khalipa running a mile for time and how he did it wrong. Right?
I do remember that as well.
Yeah. It must be 3 years ago and we do remember it.
Oh, that was a great day. So on Fraser and here's the test. So what I told Fraser is that you have to understand that assault bike, it's a fatigue generating piece of equipment. I mean, that's really what it is. And if your arms are moving back and forth at a high rate of speed for a long enough duration, you're going to create fatigue. And we know that as lactic acid, lactate, and these fatigue causing properties. And your body has an amazing ability of removing that fatigue. And it does it in the local muscle groups that are moving. But pretty soon, because of the length of time, the length of time that you're moving and the intensity, you overload those muscles with that fatigue. And it spills into the space between the next muscle group. And it eventually spills into the neighboring muscle group, and it eventually spills into the bloodstream, and that's called lactate shuttle. And the reason why it hits the bloodstream is it's just trying to find vacant muscle groups to help clear it out of your body, to burn it off. And the problem is that on the assault bike, your arms regenerate that, it hits the bloodstream, but so does your legs. Your legs are doing the exact same thing. So that's why it's a fatigue generating piece of equipment, is because you have so many muscle groups that are generating fatigue. But what if you just do nothing with your arms? Let's say you're just pedaling on a Concept 2 bike erg and your arms aren't moving. Could your legs do more work? Well, of course they could, because your arms aren't contributing additional lactic acid into the bloodstream. So if that's true, then you should train your legs separately to maximize their work capacity. likewise, you should be training your arms separately to maximize their work capacity without contribution of leg fatigue. And then, of course, if you want to get good in a movement, you have to do the movement. So what I'm saying to you, Matt, is that you have to train the legs separately, you have to train the arms separately, and you have to train the movement of riding the assault bike. 3 different protocols. And that's what I said. And there's a lot of science in there, but it's in a way where you can sink your teeth into it. And it sets a foundation for curiosity from Matt Fraser, right? Now you're explaining how lactic acid comes into the body and now options of removing it. And what you want is you want those questions that he asks to lead to another question. Because if you can get athletes curious and wanting to learn, now you got them.
Yeah.
You have them. And it goes back to what we've said before is it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're CrossFit HQ and you're looking at your affiliates, you're an affiliate owner and you're looking at your members, or you're a coach and you're looking at the athletes. Retention is how you should judge your performance. And if you get athletes asking questions and engaging, then they're not engaging their time with anybody else. It's with you. And that's what you want.
Yeah, agreed. Love it. Excellent. Yeah, that's a perfect way of explaining it. And like you say, I think any coach listening can take a lot home from that for sure. Just because it builds. Go on, sorry.
Well, so that's why, like, I think that if a coach is told by a member, I'm not good in a burpee, right? That could be because they don't have a certain cycle time, right? That they can't move fast enough. But it also could be, a burpee is a multitude of different movements combined into one, like a thruster. And a coach shouldn't just be looking and saying, oh, we have to do more burpees because they're not good in burpees. Well, what you want to do is you want to find that limitation that is within that particular movement and attack it.
Yeah, for sure. It is like, I actually, obviously people are doing a lot of burpees at the minute on the Zoom calls and stuff like that, because most people haven't got as much equipment. So something I've been trying to get across to our members is like, feel what's going wrong when you're doing a burpee, and come and ask me what's happening. What's like, why is it that I can't breathe when I do burpees? It might be because you can't keep your midline stable enough. Like, is it that you've pressed fatigues first? Okay, then like you can develop those things separately. We can work on midline stabilization. We can work on your press. Like, it's going to make you better. And again, like, part of the reason I asked the question is because I've said these things to people, and few and far between come back to me and say, so this is what I noticed. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, but
if I speaking of the burpee,
mm-hmm.
if I had a class and we did a burpee related workout, immediately after that class, I would have them consider the 2 things that I talked about during the explanation of the workout. And what I want you to think about in this workout while you're doing it is, because part of it is you want people to think strategically and not just empty thoughts. And there's a tendency in CrossFit to just clear the mechanism and only just move. And you want people to be more strategic during that process and thinking about different aspects. It could be while you're running, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on your eye position and your chin position. And that's it. Nothing else. Just think of your chin position. But I would write down, we could break down the burpee into a multitude of different things, but just say, look at the push-up portion and look at the hinge with the jump. Which one of those 2 phases while you were doing the burpees was the most challenging for you?
Yeah.
And so you would get 2 different answers, and now you've divided the class.
Yeah.
So in a week, you come back and you're going to say, we're going to do a burpee workout. But now, last week when we talked about this, the people that said the push-up was their weakness, you're on this side, and now the hinge and the jump side, you're on the other. And we're going to do these burpees. But the people that said their limitation was in the push-up, the way we're going to do this is 1 burpee for you. It's going to be 2 push-ups. and then one jump. On the other side of it is you're going to do one push-up, but you're going to hinge twice. We're going to focus on the weakness and we're going to put more time in there. And that's what we should be doing.
Yeah,
I love
agreed.
that. That's a really good way of explaining it as well.
And that's just case in point of explaining something that I struggle to explain to my to my members in a really clear way that people are going to remember. So thank you very much for that.
Well, I get people that like come up to me and they're like, do you remember, so you guys remember in Madison where they took that cheese curd and they threw it over the hay bale and then they had to run?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of athletes that came up afterwards and they're like, I need to meet, like, you got to help me with my running. You got to help me with my running. And the thing is that here they had to do these burpees, but also lift a heavy object over a hay bale, a high hay bale. Yeah. And it involved lots of jumping in there. Well, was it really the running that there was limitation, or was it because that load was so heavy and the jump being more of a ballistic movement created fast twitch fiber recruitment? And so when they started the run, they were in a non-sustainable pace, right? They were above their lactate threshold. And so what they did was they spent their run actually recovering, so that they can go back and perform the ballistic high strength based movements. And so that's where, like, as coaches, we need to help guide the athlete of like what was really happening. Like me, you take me to the track and you give me a 95-pound barbell and you say, okay, Chris, your workout is 5 rounds, 15 thrusters, 400-meter run. Well, if you saw me run after 15 thrusters at 95 pounds, you'd swear I was a terrible runner.
Yeah.
That's where we can provide some insight.
Yeah, agreed. I love it. Absolutely excellent. So one thing I want to kind of move on to as well is that you actually did something really interesting lately. You did a study review for the Morning Jaw Cup. I just think it will be something that people can take home and think about after with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and the coronavirus. Your review is really interesting, and they summarised how you're using it to help your athletes. So could you elaborate on that a little bit more, what you found in the study?
Oh, so part of it is that everybody is really having a hard time with the media. And what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? What's safe? What's unsafe? And so part of it is that, you know, I came across an initial study that wasn't peer reviewed, but it had done some initial laboratory work on the spread of COVID. And it compared people that were walking versus running, and the slipstream that is created in when people are moving, and how particulate trails behind people. And in this study, it recommended that it recommended a certain distance if you're walking behind somebody or running behind somebody that would guarantee be safe. And so that to me was like, you know what? Because people are sitting there, if you're static and not moving and you're 6 feet, that's considered safe. But what if the environment changes? What if there's wind? What if there's a fan in a gym? Can particulate move easier? And so all I was doing was I was like, okay, here's a study, not peer reviewed, but it's showing some data. And maybe it's flawed, but they're also measuring the movement of COVID in certain environments. And so what I did is I relayed that information to people that want to run together, that if you want to run side by side, the truth is that based upon this study, that's way better than running directly behind somebody. And so what I did is with the Mayhem, I have a running group at CrossFit Mayhem, and you know what, we have 20 people, we cap it at 20, and I want to have the group come out and run. But what's the safe way to do it? Meaning safe that they're not worried. The problem is like I said, the press, the media has made things where people are paralyzed. They don't know what to do. And so if we can provide a standard where here's an area that we're somewhat comfortable in, then let's abide by these rules. And That's the purpose of it.
Excellent.
Love it.
Excellent. I say, I think, and I read through the article and stuff, because obviously we're hopefully going to be starting to run some form of gym again soon. And again, wanted to be able to just give people the safest possible way. And like, I know I see, like, and a good example is my mum goes out for a walk with my auntie, and they walk behind each other because of the social distancing. And I'm like, well, Mum, maybe you should walk to the side.
Or just go to the side.
And so
I think that's part of the issue now, is like, we're so, you know what, I don't know about you guys, but I've been in isolation, and I was 10 weeks and it's just me and Heidi. And I do feel like I picked up a little crazy. I'm not thinking logical. And part is like, you get so wound up into your own storyline, and that you want to find like, okay, what is okay? And I think that a lot of us, when we finally venture out, there's this feeling of fear. And what we want to do is we've got to find some solutions. And if we always listen to virologists or epidemiologists, their job is to avoid any risk at all cost. That's their job. They're pessimistic by nature. That's their job. They're never going to say that, oh, it's fine. You know what? It's okay. That's not their job. Well, that's not a solution. I can't myself be stuck inside for another 10 weeks. I can't do that. So I need a solution. I need something that allows me to go out and clear my head, but do it in a way that I feel more comfortable.
Yeah, agreed. And again, we mentioned, we had a little chat before the start of the we started the podcast. You mentioned before that as well about basically the current climate of COVID-19 and running Zoom classes, keeping people engaged, and the way gyms can offer obviously better remote programming, that kind of thing. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think this is a really a good conversation, as far as, you know, we always want, whether it's athletes that we coach or, you know, affiliate owners that have coaches, you always want to create improvements in ability, right? Advancements. You want to create more greatness in them in multiple areas. I mean, as a coach, one of the things that I do with athletes is that I recognize that I may only get them 2 times per week. And so I don't have the luxury of, one, making mistakes. It has to be accurate. It has to be really the highest and best use of their time. But I also must do things in parallel. So what I mean by that is that I'm going to teach you the skill of pacing. I'm going to teach you about biomechanics, but I'm also going to be teaching you tactically, you know, so that when you learn biomechanics, when you learn pacing, when you develop your arsenal of gears, you're now already involved in the tactical side, becoming a competitor. And so tactical meaning, like, are you aware of your terrain? Are you aware of the direction of the course? Can you go apex to apex? Are you aware of when a cloud blocks the sun and you can sense the temperature change? So you train these things because you don't have the luxury of time. And so you're always providing insights, and some of those insights are way too advanced. But if you keep introducing them as they accomplish the easier tasks, then the more advanced ones all of a sudden slot in, and those become easier. So you want to provide a range of concepts from the most elementary to the most advanced, so that time is really, like we said, respected. And I think that in terms of like, so I do a lot of community outreach type programs, and you know, during COVID, I would say I've done 50 Zoom classes for free and around the world, and just helping communities, like a lot in Spain. I've done a lot in Italy, Brazil, hard hit markets, to just help them. And it's a twofold approach. One, I want to help their community, right? Their members, but what I'm trying to do is teach the affiliate owner and the coaches within that affiliate on how to run a Zoom class, because we don't know whether or not this is going to come back again. And we don't know whether or not you might have to do Zoom classes down the road.
Yeah.
And there is a tendency for gym owners to just say, you know what, I'm brick and mortar, and this is just a temporary solution to provide my members a service. Well, to me, that sounds like they're delivering mediocrity. And that is the wrong approach. And I get why they're doing it. All of their money is in brick and mortar. And so they believe that we have to get back into the gym to provide this incredible value. But this is an opportunity right now to hone a craft, to show your members that you can create a Zoom class that's just as good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to do, is I show two things. I give an experience to the athletes that are on the call, but what I'm also doing something in parallel, and that is the indirect messages. This is how a Zoom class is engaging. This is how you get 60 people in a Zoom class. There is a lot of benefits in doing Zoom. You know, there really is, because you can see people's movement and you can see it quickly. And a gym, if you have 30 people, it's impossible to see people move unless you walk through the floor. So what I do is I write workouts that involve the participant. And what I mean by that is, you know, a lot of times what we do in CrossFit is we write a workout up on the board and we go, here's the workout of the day. And we tell them, this is what you're doing. They have no say. This is the workout. Yeah. And what I learned early on as a kid is I was late in developing, and I rebelled a little bit, and I was tired of being told what to do. Why am I always being told what to do? Why don't I have a say? And what I realized as I got into the workforce is that if you involve people in the process, now there's a vested interest on their part, meaning they're an active participant, meaning they're going to give you more of their ability. They're going to give you their passion. And if you can do that in a workout by having them take ownership in it, then they're going to be actually delivering a higher amount of effort or performance, which, as we know, leads to a bigger and better adaptation.
Yeah.
And so that's really the trick, is that how do you engage? Like I do a lot of stuff for the kids in Kauai. You know, there's a huge drug addiction issue. It's a cause of ours that 6 years. I mean, we've probably gave last year $6,000 to $7,000 plus time. Yeah. And I do Zoom classes with these kids, and these kids are 8 years old. How are you going to engage a kid that is 5 time zones away and keep them on a call? How are you going to do it? And so that's really like what you should be looking at, is that you want to keep them engaged. And so a good example would be is that we could do a workout such as this, where, hey, we're going to do a thruster workout, and, you know, Phil picked it, and I hate thrusters too. But Phil picked it. And so if you're going to get mad at this whole thing, you know, that's Phil's fault. But I'm going to try and make the thruster more enjoyable. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to break up the thruster into 3 different parts. You know, we're going to look at the front squat, and then we're going to look at the press, and then we're going to look at the whole movement itself, the thruster. And the way we're going to do this workout is that it's going to be a 5-minute workout. Every minute on the minute, we're going to start a new round. And the way a round is going to be created with those 3 movements is we're going to come up with your individual number of reps that you complete during the warm-up. And those numbers of reps that you do for each of the 3 movements will become 1 round for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to, like I said, break it up into a front squat, a push press, and a thruster. And what I want you to do is I want you to take 2 minutes. I need you to get a piece of paper. I need you to get something to write with. And then what I need you to do is get an object that weighs no more than 45 pounds for men and no more than 35, ideally 25 pounds for women. If you want to just get a heavy textbook, that's going to be perfectly fine. And the reason why it's going to be fine is if it's lighter, you're just going to end up doing more repetitions.
Yeah.
So everybody goes and gets their object. They have a piece of paper. And then what I do is I take them through and I say, okay, so we're going to right now, we're going to do, and I tell them 15 seconds of push press. And what I want to do is I want it to be very slow with your object as a warm up. I want you to get comfortable with the movement, counting reps, because I need you ultimately to count your number of repetitions. Now we're going to do each movement 2 times. One's always going to be easy. One's going to be fast. And we do the first round, they count them. And then I say, okay, so now you're going to do this next round for 15 seconds. I want it at a fast intensity, not a sprint, just fast. They then do it and they write down their number of reps. They then do the same, write down the reps, same thing on the thruster, write down the reps. Now that should take them 45 seconds of time. So the remainder of their time is rest. And we do that 5 times through. And I tell people that what I want is I want you to pick a finishing round time that you think that you can repeat for all of the 5 rounds. So meaning if you do it in 45 seconds, or let's say 40 seconds, right? Because you're going faster, then I want all rounds to be 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And this workout, your performance will be based upon pacing. It's not on how many reps you do. It's not what weight you're lifting. I'm judging your performance on your repeatability, pacing, consistency. So pick whatever speed that you think you can hold for all 5 rounds. And then I tell them after this, we're going to do 2 minutes of air thrusters at a recovery pace, super slow. So the total workout is 5 minutes, every minute on the minute. And then you're going to do 2 minutes of active recovery thrusters to basically, the purpose is to clear the lactate in the muscle groups that you just created. The rule is on those recovery thrusters as slow as you want, just no stopping. And there's your workout. And so what we're doing is that every one of them, one, is responsible for the load they pick. They're picking the intensity, the speed that they're moving, but their performance is based on a skill. And that's where it's all encompassing. And so let's say that you're doing this workout with your 8-year-old son and he's side by side. He has an ability to look better than you if he's more consistent in his 1 round finishing times. Yeah. And that's where what I'm saying is like, we have to do things that are more engaging because you're not there. So how do you pull them into the monitor? By giving them ownership. And that's one of the things that I've always had as a coach is our job as coaches is to find value in terms of the programming, you know, and we can research, you know, prior games events and look at statistics and data and everything. And that's the stuff that we do. We find those opportunities and then we explain that to the athlete. We give them the purpose. But the thing is that when we hand it off, if that athlete doesn't take ownership, then they're just checking a box. And you want them to reflect on their performance afterwards. You want them to think about you. You want them to think, if I have another shot of doing that workout, I could have been better. I could have been better. And so what you tell them is in a workout like that, you know what, in this workout, whatever your first round time is, you're writing that down. And what I want is I want plus or minus 1 second for rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. If you are outside of 1 second, that's not good. That's not, there's either perfect or not good. Yeah. And so what I want to know is you get 4 cracks at it. Round 2, 3, 4, and 5, can you be plus or minus 1 second? And you can't game it. You can't look at a clock. You just got to go and feel it. And that's what I'm also teaching people. Practice creates efficiency. Your body remembers.
That's what
memory.
you did for us, didn't you, on the aerobic capacity course with the circles?
Yep.
It was extremely frustrating. It was a good learning curve.
But what you want is I learned a lot. My dad was an attorney, and I would go into the courtroom, and he was a defense attorney. He defended doctors, and he would go up and he had this incredible gift of asking questions to witnesses. And when they were lying, he stopped before like confronting them with their lies. And it was a gift beyond gifts. And I learned from him on this. If you tell and put it out there where, you know what, that person was lying, and you call them out, you've just taken away from the jury their power. You want the jury to sit there and go, it's so obvious, tell him. Like when you're watching something with suspense, it's like, say it, say it, say it, say it. But the trick is to back off and let the athlete say it.
Yeah.
Let them have that power. And I learned that's if you can do something where you set an expectation, but the athlete afterwards is kicking themselves of going, I could have been better. Yeah. I could have. That's telling you they want to come back and try it again.
Yeah. I can't wait to see that's where I'm this week now, Josh.
So when I write workouts, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm writing workouts that push that experience, where I didn't know I can do it. But because it's a very delicate thing. Every athlete remembers that last rep. So if you did a workout 10 rounds and they bombed the last round, they're going to remember that they bombed. And that's not good either. They have to be challenged on the extremes. There needs to be areas where, there is going to be a failure. Because that's, as coaches, how we find boundaries. We don't want workouts to be perfect. Otherwise, that's a waste of time.
Brilliant. Excellent. So Chris, obviously I want to be super respectful of your time. I realise we're creeping over the hour mark now. And like I said, I understand that you've probably got lots to be getting on with. And as much as I'd love to talk to you all day, I'm sure you're super busy. So I've got two more quick questions that it wraps up most of the questions that we had basically. The first one is relevant to it was something Josh wanted to know about, because Josh is particularly interested in weightlifting, but obviously he does CrossFit as well, and we want to know how and when you were working with Rich Froning and Matt Fraser for the first time, how do you not make those people worse with endurance? How do you make them improve?
So good questions.
I know. I feel like it.
The reason this come about was my weightlifting coach recently posted on his group, just explained to people that yes, you can't weightlift at the minute because obviously you're all at home and not everyone's got barbells, but you can be doing aerobic and cardio based stuff to actually improve your recovery and potentially your weightlifting performance. Now, obviously, from a group of weightlifters, there becomes a lot of resistance because they don't like getting out of breath.
Because running loses gains.
Because running loses gains, yeah. But from obviously your point of view and the people that you've worked with, what advice would you give to them in terms of that, just to reassure them that you're not going to run away from your gains?
Well, so let's just talk about you as an example. So you're strong, right?
Thanks, Chris.
Right. So part of it is I've told this story about Spencer Hendel, and doing 100 handstand push-ups for time. And, part of it is that I'm sure that you can lift a lot of weight over your head. Right. But if you're looking at the movement of a handstand push-up, which is essentially taking the same movement pattern, the same muscle fiber recruitment, are you really actually able to rep out a large volume of handstand push-ups? Are you? Spencer Hendel, he was doing 100 of them for time. And it was always doing 10 reps. 3 reps and then resting for 10 seconds. It was always 3 and 10. And his goal was to get faster in doing 100 of them. So as a coach, when you're looking at an athlete like that, you're trying to find where are those weaknesses. I mean, there's a very clear goal, but where do we target the workout stimulus so that he can improve? And so what you have to do is you have to look at the athlete and do some form of an assessment. The problem is that the assessment comes in an exchange of dialogue, information from the athlete.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to do? Well, he's trying to do 100 of them as fast as he possibly can. All right. What's preventing him from getting faster? Is it his strength, his force, right? Is it? What is it? And he tells me, he says, you know what? I do just get tired. So I bet you have an amazing bench press, for example, your 1 rep bench. It's amazing. My bench press is 75 kilos, right? So 75, that's it. But you know what? I could do 45 push-ups, I'm broken. What's the reason why I can't do one more? How about you? What's the reason why you can't do one more? If you have a goal, if I have a goal of doing 50, then where do I need to focus my time? Do I just do more push-ups? And this is the thing where a lot of people are missing. Is the solution to get better at a muscle up to do more muscle ups? Is it? Or is it to really look at where is your limitation within that muscle up and focus in that particular area?
Yeah.
And so that's what I really, I want people to understand, athletes especially, is you need to own your particular strengths and weaknesses, and you need to evaluate them. Because as soon as you tell me, and this is something that I've been talking about for 4 years, it's just that this concept is really tough for CrossFitters because they're so ingrained. I need to work on my speed. I need to work on my strength. I need to work on my power because that's going to get me more push-ups. And that's not true. It's valuable, but if you're telling me the reason why you can't do push-ups, more of them, is because you get tired and you're able to do 40 of them, then what I need to do is I need to improve your ability to recover. If I can clear fatigue at a faster rate, then you can do more. Yeah. A good example of that is you take Froning. Froning, when we started, he was able to do a workout and then run afterwards and recover at a 10-minute mile pace. So he can go and jog back in the day, and it would be 10-minute mile pace. So take Fran, you do Fran, he can go outside and recover from Fran at a 10-minute mile pace. Do you know that Fraser can recover at a 7:35 mile?
Damn.
So what I'm talking about is how fast are you in your recovery phase? Can you move at a 7:35 mile and recover from Fran? Can you do it? Because your limitation is going to come from your volume, right? It's going to come from your strength, your intensity, your speed, or it's going to come from your ability to clear fatigue. And CrossFit athletes don't look at recovery. You know what we do when we go to the track? We run a 100-meter sprint, and then we sit around and do nothing for 3 minutes. When you do a 5x5 back squat, you know what you do? You sit around for 3 minutes and do nothing.
Absolutely.
And we all know as coaches, if you put a stimulus on the body, meaning sitting around and doing nothing, you create an adaptation of you're good at doing nothing in your recovery.
Yeah.
And that's where it needs to be redirected. It needs to be targeting weaknesses. That's why in the thruster workout example I gave you, you did 2 minutes of active recovery thrusters with just air. Because what you're doing is you're extending the workout 2 more minutes, but the emphasis changed.
Yeah. Amazing. I love it.
That's where you have to look at all aspects. You can't just look at data and go, oh, the most common movement at the CrossFit Games is running, and so we need to do more running. Well, that's not, okay. Yeah. That's a data point, but that doesn't tell you what you need to do for that particular person. And you only have a small amount of time. you know, that, and so that's where it comes in.
So if we was to sort of say to weightlifters as an example, yes, you can't have access to a barbell now, but if you was to obviously improve your, I don't know, aerobic capacity or whatever, then your recovery would improve. So therefore, as a result, between weightlifting sessions and even between sets, you're actually recovering better and therefore able to get more out of the volume that you're actually doing. Would that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And part of it is that if you don't have access to like heavy equipment, then just I'll tell you what, like we did in the course, do 10 seconds of feet tuck jumps as fast as you possibly can. And then for the remainder of the minute, do very slow active recovery thrusters. And there's a lot of confusion because people think active recovery is an hour-long row. An hour-long row, if you gave it to me, that's a workout. So active recovery is taking a movement that you just actually are following a similar movement pattern, but the intent of active recovery is to move slowly to clear the fatigue from the movement that just created fatigue. So a running sprint into a walk, a running sprint into a jog, a 10 seconds of 95-pound thrusters into a very slow PVC thruster. You know what? You want to get good at your handstand push-ups, do 10 to 12 seconds of push presses, and then drop that and do the remainder of that minute with the PVC pipe. What we're doing is we're focusing on getting you to do more time, but we're disguising it as recovery. Because I would argue that your limitation is your muscular stamina in long time domains. It's not that you're not strong, but you can't sustain it for a long amount of time. Muscular stamina, meaning your muscles get tired. So how are you going to build capacity if you're always sitting in a chair? What you should do is you should gradually take that PVC pipe after your push presses. And now maybe what you do is you get a 5-pound plate instead of a PVC pipe. Yeah. You drive the direction of adaptation. So if your weakness is my recovery, then week after week, don't change your strength because your strength's good. Leave the strength to push press with the weight alone. Leave it at 10 to 12 seconds or whatever you decided on the intensity side, your sprint, but gradually increase the weight of your recovery side. So like if it was in the movement of running, if I gave you a 100-meter sprint and then said, I want you to finish that jog around the track, let's just say it's a 10-minute mile. If you want to go to the games, that's not even good. You got to get that down to 8 minutes. So you know what? The next time you do it, you're going to do 5 rounds. I want a 100-meter sprint at your same sprint speed, which should target your 400-meter PR time. And I need you to do a recovery jog. Yeah, okay, you did it in 10 minutes average last time. This time, I want you to try and shoot for 9:45. Yeah. I want to make this next workout and challenge you, not by increasing your intensity on the sprint, not by giving you more volume. I'm going to make the next workout more challenging by making the recovery the targeted stimulus. So we're going to continue moving in the direction which you said is your weakness. So imagine we go to 9:30, then we're at 9:15 at 9 minutes. Rich Froning now does a jog recovery at an 8-minute mile. Right. Because what did we do? We focused on the area that was the weakness. Yeah. And so I see you and what you're doing. It's like, I'm worried about these things, but you're never going to improve your muscular stamina in the same workout patterns. You're just not providing any overload in the direction of the adaptation.
Yeah. Awesome. Great answer, Chris.
Love it.
So by the way, on the strength thing, just let's clear this up.
Yeah.
I've never had an athlete on any level that has not gotten stronger by including running into their training program. And it baffles me that this comes up considering the workouts that the people that win at the CrossFit Games, and I'm talking about teenagers, masters athletes, and individuals, teams. How is it possible that what they're doing doesn't conflict with this, wow, if I do a running based protocol, it's going to interfere with my strength. You know, this interference effect, it's a real thing, but there is no scientific data that says how much is too much.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know, what I know is that if it's limited, it becomes complementary. And so if we think about the movement of running, if we're not applying too much, right? And I know that doing 2 times a week, somewhere in that 5,000 meter range is complementary, because every athlete I've ever worked with has gotten stronger during these times. I mean, Rich Froning in the first 10 weeks, he went from a 6-minute mile down to 5:41. And he has vocally said every lift went up, and he had just won the games 4 times. So
wow.
Every lift went up. His vertical leap went from 31 to 33 inches. So part of it is that we know that when we run, we're standing, we're having to support our structure, right? Ligaments, tendons, bones, muscles, we're supporting it. Most of what we do in the gym is the same exact thing. But when something's heavy, what happens? When something's heavy, a high amount of force, what your brain's going to do is grab all of your fibers. It's going to grab all of them, your slow twitch, fast twitch fibers. But what if your rate of recruitment of your slow twitch fibers, or your percentage of recruitment of slow twitch fibers, is not optimized because you don't spend enough time overloading those slow twitch fibers to create any level of adaptation? That means those slow twitch fibers are not available for those lifts. And so part of it is like, I get it. This overload principle, interference effect, I got it. But what I'm telling people, and look at who is winning at the CrossFit Games, and how is it possible that those protocols aren't calming this down? It's really a surprise for me. And even coaches, you know, all they have to do is just, I mean, anybody listening, look up interference effect, and please send me concrete data that says that, you know what, here's the cutoff point. And are we, by running 2 times per week at a cap of around 5,000 meters, is it interfering with strength, or is it?
Would that be 5,000 meters total, or would that be like 2 bouts of 5,000 meters?
No. It'd be two different workouts, 5,000 meters a piece. And so you break that up in any way you want. So, I mean, you could do 2 rounds of 10 sets of 1 minute of running with 15 seconds of rest. So 10 rounds, 1 minute on, 15 seconds of rest. After that round, take 3 minutes of rest and do it again, and do it at a moderate intensity. Boom, there you go.
I'm going to go running right now. So I want to snatch more weight.
But I mean, if you watch games level athletes, what they're doing is they're doing active recovery after they're doing Metcons. Yeah. Because here's the thing is that for me, I watch people suffer in this Metcon and then they lay on the ground, which is amazing that they did that. And CrossFitters, I've never come across a population of people that voluntarily is okay with running a mile for time. I remember when I would show up at you know, I ran with the women's track team at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, where I went to school, and it was like, when there was a timed event, it was like, I went to the bathroom and missed it. Like, I'm not participating, like, oof. But CrossFitters? And so they do these Metcons and they turn themselves inside out and they're laying on the ground. But my point is that you just put the body into a perfect position where you flooded the bloodstream with lactic acid. Now, why don't you pick any movement that you want, any movement that is your weakness? Take an air squat. If you're struggling with moderate loads of a squat type movement, and that could be a thruster, a wall ball, then you know what? After you finish your Metcon, instead of laying on the ground, what I want you to do is take 30 seconds to get your composure, and then look up at the clock and give me 2 minutes of very slow active recovery air squats. And what's going to happen is that those slow twitch fibers that are being used to perform the air squat are going to pull that lactate out of the bloodstream and consume it as a fuel. And when it consumes that lactate as a fuel, it takes those acidic properties, those fatigue-causing properties, out with it. Essentially, what you're doing is you're training your weakness on how to pull fatigue out and consume it as a fuel, so that when you ultimately want to do more wall balls, you want to do more front squats at a moderate load, you want to do more air squats, you want to be better at your Murph time, you now have taken advantage of that Metcon by doing active recovery, but you've actually targeted your limitation. Like at the games, I always see people riding an assault bike afterwards, which is a great thing if that's what they do in the gym, right?
Yeah.
The assault bike's great because so many movements, but if you don't practice it, the body has no adaptation. You're just making yourself more tired. I love when I go up and it's like, wow, like, see, riding on this thing, you know, like, one, they're riding it way too slow, right? They're just going through the motions. They don't even realize that it's intensity driven, but it's like, I always ask, it's like, what are you doing this for? Oh, I saw Josh Bridges doing it, and so I just decided to do it. And it's like, wow, like you're just now hurting yourself, because they don't realize that everything, the reason why we practice is because the body creates adaptations around that. And if you're riding an assault bike after an event or a workout, then you have to practice that over and over so that the body knows what it's being tasked to do.
So it may be more beneficial to grab a PVC pipe and practice shoulder to overhead to work on your strict handstand push-up recovery, something like that. Okay, cool. Love it.
You could pick anything, because remember, it's in the blood.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is that you're trying to help pull that lactate out of the bloodstream. So the reason why I said 2 minutes, just so you know, is that remember that when you finish a Metcon, your heart rate is high. And so you get, incredible blood circulation. So that lactate is circulating throughout your body relatively easy. Matter of fact, after about an hour, most of that lactate, even if you're laying on the ground, will be gone. And so what you want to do is you want to, while your heart rate is high, you can just do strict shoulder press, nice and slow. But after 2 minutes, your heart rate is dropping too low to keep the circulation of that lactate-rich blood.
Okay, yeah.
And so 2 minutes is about that point where it's like, you know what, the amount of it is going away. Your body is incredible at recovery and clearing of that fatigue. And so what you would want to do is after that, because you still have a significant amount of lactate in the bloodstream, you would want to do something that elevates the heart rate. So the fastest way to clear lactate in active recovery is get really close to that lactate threshold. The intensity is fairly high. So that's why it's super effective afterwards, because you're going from above your lactate threshold in terms of heart rate to below it.
Yeah.
And so that's when you would hop on an assault bike or a rower, or you would go out for a jog. Or you could do things like a burpee, things that help bump up the heart rate. And I would do then 2 more minutes and then call it.
Yeah.
And so instead of your workout, let's say a 5-minute Metcon, it's now 9 minutes. And what you've done is you've tricked the athlete. Oh, it's just recovery. You know what? The only rule is don't stop. So go as slow as you want. Well, you know what you're now doing is that instead of laying on the ground and doing nothing, they're like, that sounds not too bad. And so we're extending the length of the workout, but we're working the aerobic side of the equation versus the anaerobic side.
Amazing. So again, like I say, I'm so conscious that we're keeping you sitting really long, and I'll start to wrap it up in 1 second. You mentioned heart rate and recovery, and obviously Rich for only being able to recover at a 8-minute mile pace. I was fortunate to be at Strength in Depth and watch the running event there, and I saw you mention afterwards that Rich was at 90% plus of his heart rate for the whole of the run, or pretty much the whole of the run. My only real question, whether you can answer it, is how? Like, how do you manage to sustain that level for 20 minutes nearly? Like, it was ridiculous. It was 6K, I think it was.
Yeah.
X Endurance. That's how.
X Endurance. Yeah, our sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, let's face. Well, I mean, you know that it's interesting on X Endurance. Speaking of that, and I mean, I'm not sponsored by them at all. I just am a fan of the product. And what's really incredible is that you go over to these elite athletes' homes, and there's a pack of X Endurance, and they buy it. They buy it, which is really kind of like it's like a hidden secret. It's like they don't want people to know that that's one of the things that provides value. Yeah, it's a trip. No, so with Froning, I mean, the thing that's really, he is highly coachable. He really, because he wants to learn. This is a guy that has an exercise, a degree in exercise science. He comes from a strength and conditioning background. And obviously, you know, it's Rich Froning. And he wants to learn. He wants to fill these gaps in his knowledge. And so he's very inquisitive about certain things. And, you know, the thing that I explained to him early on is that you have an amazing amount of speed, but that's the stimulus that you're always putting on your body. You're fast because you train fast, and there's your adaptation. And what we did is through, you know, some really simple and easy assessments is he needed to slow down and work the aerobic side of the equation. He needed to develop his slow twitch fibers. And part of the hard part, the issue with CrossFit athletes is they don't recognize how the body works. Your muscles, they need to be overloaded. The problem is that it's easy to overload your fast twitch fibers. They don't have much capacity. Your fast twitch fibers bring to the table speed and strength and power, but they can endure. That's the job of your slow twitch fibers. If you think about it, how long can you walk for? I don't know, 6 days, right? I did a 60-hour adventure race, so I know I could do that. And so that's not coming from fast twitch fibers. What I have done is I've adapted my slow twitch fibers. But remember that if we're going to create an adaptation in a muscle fiber, we have to overload it. But if you never do enough volume in your slow twitch fibers, then they're never overloaded, which means that there's not going to have any adaptation. And so part of it is that it's where I said in the beginning, are you doing enough volume to overload those slow twitch fibers? That's why we throw in an active recovery afterwards. We're giving those slow twitch fibers more volume, more time to overload them. And so what I did with Rich is that recognition, and he understood it right away. And what we need to do is we need to slow you down. We need to be focusing on longer time domains. But the mistake that people are making, and this is part of the greatness of CrossFit, you do not control the time domain of the workout that is going to show up on the board tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And so if you're training in zones, right, in terms of, let's say, heart rate, if you're training in zones of like, oh, I need to just practice my 20-minute time domain speed or my 5K time domain speed, then you're neglecting the muscle fibers that are needed for potentially what the workout's going to be the following day. Yeah. Remember, every movement is unique, right? So if you take the movement of running, if you sprint, what you're doing is creating efficiencies in the muscles that are being used to sprint. That is not developing your walking muscles, because a walking muscle is not going to be taking fast twitch fibers in order to perform. They're slow twitch. It's unique for the movement and the speed. So what do? I have 13 different intensities that people, like Froning do. 13. So that no matter if it's a 10-second sprint to a walk, they've hit all of those milestones along the way. And so that's where coaches and athletes, you don't need to put that kind of complexity in, but what you want to do is create a range of gears. Yeah. That's what you want. So no matter what comes, your body is going to lock in that muscle memory. So like at our course, I do one running workout, And I show people how their body, where they don't know how to pace, they're not confident in their running. It's only about 10 minutes worth of work. And you know what? They're able to match up a pace because they repeated it 10 times and their body recognizes it, you know, and it becomes efficient. That's why we practice. That's why we train, is so that we become more efficient at that movement pattern. And so that's where, like, it's like you can identify, you know, certain movements. Oh, these are most common movements in the sport, and this is what we should be working on. But as coaches, what we want to do is we want to go multiple levels beyond that. So if you're working on the movement of running, like with Froning, I knew that I needed to maintain his speed, but I wanted to work on his aerobic side. So what did we do? We worked on everything from a 15-minute time domain intensity to 20 to 30 to 40 to 60 to 75 to 90 to 120 to 3-hour paces. We worked on not just, we're going to focus on aerobic, we're going to focus on multiple time domains in parallel attacking the aerobic. And that's what I'm talking about.
Excellent. Brilliant. So, Chris, a couple of quick fire questions to finish with,
Yep.
and then we'll leave you to enjoy your day.
I love it. You got, you know what?
I could stay on all day. I could stay on all day. Really could. I also wanted to ask you as well about like your relationship with Haley Adams, because I think she's a legend, and I know you're like her main coach. But maybe we'll get you back in a few months' time. And
you guys should get Haley on here.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to Haley. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, she's a good kid, and yeah, really a good kid. And what's, you know, we always talk about, like, for me, when I meet somebody, as much as we say we don't do this, where we assess people, we do. It just scrolls through.
Yeah.
And certain behaviors of people, you automatically, because you do comparisons against like a Fraser, it's like, you're not going to ever be there. You're just not going to be there.
Right.
And Haley, she's got it. She's just got it. And the question is can she get her strength up there? And that's what makes her so, like, interesting to me, is that she just has that. And I find that I'm excited for her, but I'm excited that exists in our sport, right? And we saw that at Strength and Depth.
Yeah. I mean, she was awesome at Strength and Depth. She was sort of like, and obviously Laura Hovarth, and again, I think just like I say, if Haley could get her strength up,
that's it.
That literally the only thing.
But that was the thing, like with Haley, the thing is like, she's a kid, and most coaches, like if they had a Haley, they would say, we got to get her focusing on her sprint speed. We got to get her focusing on her strength. And here she is, she's 14 years old, 15 years old. And her body is still developing. It is very difficult to recognize, like as Haley, to her limitations, and to be patient with that. Allow her body to mature, allow her bones to settle, right? Her cartilage to settle. And don't push those heavy loads so soon. Yeah. That patience, but that tells you that she's got it. Yeah. Like, she knew it all along, but she wanted to be focusing on well-rounded fitness. And so, like, we talk about those 13 years in running, we knew that her speed was a limitation, but you know what? We're not going to focus on any weaknesses, because we want to create well-rounded fitness until you hit maturity. Yeah. And then we're going to target weaknesses, because we want to make sure that the entire spectrum of a movement has been really covered and is efficient. And then we're going to drive specific adaptations. And that's why she's exciting. I have not come across an athlete with that attitude. And you guys heard how she got invited to train with Rich?
No. I've heard her on the podcast, on Rich's podcast, but I've never...
She was 17 years old and she came here. And it was before her 18th birthday. And she came and we went up to Rich's house to do a workout, and she was sitting up there and she's like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to do the marathon row. And we're like, really? And she's like, you know what? I really want to do it. And I want to be able to do it. I wish I could have done it at the games. And Tia was there, and she sits down. She has one little water bottle. She stopped only one time during the whole thing to get one drink. She didn't finish even half the bottle. She pulled 3 hours and 15 minutes by herself. And it was like, she couldn't come up with anything else to do. And Froning, I mean, even Tia came up behind and was like looking at her monitor, because for a while there, she was like top 5, like through half marathon. And because there was no benchmarking, she just kind of finished. But Tia was like, because she was way ahead of Tia for a long time. And even Rich came over and was like, for fun, like, you're 17. You're 17. And Rich was so impressed. He's like, you know, if you ever want to come here and be a part of what we're doing, you are welcome. This is the energy that we want. And the rest is history. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry. So your 2 questions.
No. It's all right. This is much more fun. And Josh won't know this either as well, but I know that during Murph, Rich was scared to run with Haley because she's so fast. Like, and so.
Well, you heard that she beat him in the open.
Yeah, I heard that.
Crazy.
But what's so funny is that she doesn't even want to talk about like those things but inside, she is always giving maximal effort. And the thing is what people don't recognize about Rich is that he acts like he's not, like, I was once with Rich, and there was, when he creates these workouts, depending upon how many people, he'll create groups. And what we do is we rotate around. Well, at this one point, there was 5 different people doing double unders. And afterwards, he made a comment to Tasia Persevich. And he's like, you know, we got to figure out, you missed on number 32 and 57 or whatever it was. I'm like, 32 and 57, what are you talking about? She tripped up on number 32 and number 57. I'm like, he's counting.
I can't even count my own rep.
You would never even know. And so that's where like Haley comes in, and she's always coming after him because he's always paying attention. Yeah. And yeah, there's a guy that, you know, he's a good coach, really good, amazing at programming, and his athletic abilities speak for himself. Like, he's kind of that whole thing, and it's natural to him.
He's a fascinating guy. It's crazy.
Definitely. And again, you said with Haley though that and again, I don't know where I've heard this, but you mentioned it. Then you waited a long time before you even began to work on her strengths, and on her strength, I should say, and like just having that foresight and having coaches around you that are willing to sort of say, look, like, hold that in, like, you will get there. And I like, from watching her, I have no doubt that she will get there. She will get strong enough. I think she's got it. But again, what, 2 or 3 years, 4 years to develop that strength, and it's scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's also part of it. Is like, she's fortunate and has the respect of Tia and Froning and Fraser, and they're all here. Yeah. And so you have those people that kind of, they limit the amount of mistakes that you'll make, right? A lot of athletes, I mean, we all try it because we're all unique in our own ways, and we're trying to figure out what works and doesn't work. You know, I mean, nutrition is a perfect example, and they're able to provide guidance that really saves a tremendous amount of time. Yeah. But she's earned that. She's earned it because they respect her, right? As a person, they like her. Yeah.
Awesome. So, quick fire questions.
Yeah.
So, first one, a book recommendation that you think everybody should read.
I've just been reading here. I just read a book. It's called A Man in Full. It's just it's a fiction book, but I read that. I read a lot of scientific pieces and studies, and I don't consider that like, I mean, it's fun reading for me, but it's not like where I get immersed in the whole thing. But A Man in Full is pretty good, I gotta say. It's based upon some badass guy that's losing all of his money that lives in the South. And yeah, the opening scene starts out where the guy is on his ranch and there's a rattlesnake and he doesn't shoot it. He just picks it up with his bare hand.
Rich Froning. It's
I was
Rich
gonna say,
Froning.
It's Rich. That's Rich's dad. Rich's dad. So I got to tell you, so 4th of July out here is just, it's incredible. Like my son who is 22. He came out here 2 years ago. So it was before. So at that time he was 20. So they sell fireworks in California. You can't buy fireworks because of fire hazard, but here in Tennessee, you can, and they're all over the place during 4th of July. And they have these mortars that essentially it looks like a cannonball with a fuse coming out. And what you do is you drop it into a canister and like a tube, and it shoots up in the sky and then blows up. So it has these long fuses on it, they're like 12 inches long. So you can put it into the canister and the fuse hangs out the top. So we're at Rich Froning Sr.'s house and it's like 10 o'clock at night on 4th of July. And my son Jack has got, what he asked for was, when he bought him, he told the guy, he says, I'm looking for some mortars. And he's like, well, what kind? And my son Jack, he's like, I'd like to see the ones that would scare me. And the guy's all, well, these would probably all scare you. And he's all, okay, so which ones, if it blows up in the sky, it sets off a car alarm? And the guy selling them, he says, they'll all do that. You just got to hold it low enough. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what? And my son, Jack, like when you hear that, you're like, he's trying to catch up with like the genius of that idea. And he's never heard it. He's like, wait, what? He's like, you hold it like it's like a bazooka. Like you hold it in your arms and that's how you fire these things. These are like 3 and 4 inch mortars. So we're up at Senior's house and we're firing these things off. And Senior's like, what's with the long fuses? And he grabs his mortar and he has, of course, a knife in his pocket, and he trims this thing so it's maybe a 1/2 inch. He lights it. He takes it with his 2 fingers, drops it into the cylinder. He turns, and it was this giant plume of just fire. And it was like, wow. That's a man in full.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the guy.
No wonder Rich is how he is.
I was just going to say, now I understand a little bit more about Rich Froning as well. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Amazing. Sorry, I've lost my questions. There they are.
So we're on number 2 now.
Yeah. If you could learn from one person, and they can be dead or alive, any one person, you can sit down and just have a conversation with them and learn everything you can in 24-hour period, who would you pick? Might be a tough one, but.
So I really like people that have stuck in a profession and are experts in their field for a long time. The depth of their knowledge and the simplicity in which they can convey that knowledge appeals to me a lot. And so people that are masters of their craft, like even take podcasting like here, I really have marveled at how Joe Rogan does it. And he does it in a way where you're not aware of how smart he is. Yeah. And the way in which he carries the show, and he does it so seamlessly, and to sit and listen, it's it's really incredible. But I grew up in the tech side. So being in Silicon Valley, I worked in sales in Silicon Valley for 25 years. And I've gotten to know a lot of very smart, high-tech people there. That to me appeals the most. In high tech, when you meet up with visionaries and the way in which their mind works and how they can see the future before it happens. So smart people, one of my mentors, this guy by the name of Jerry Houlihan, has an IQ of 178, and he tells me all the time about things that are going to happen before they happen. And what smart people like that see is they have a much greater advanced notification, because they're able to look at the battlefield and see it come together before others.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a high-tech visionary can see. They can't put it into words, but they can see it. And so like people like a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs, who are, you know, maniacs in their own way, but I would love to sit down and to dive into how does that work? Because like, so I'll give you an example. So me, I'm reasonably, you know, I mean, my grades were always good and things, but one of the things that I do that I didn't know until visiting a psychologist and talking about just weird things that I would do. And as a kid, you don't know you do weird things. You have no idea. You think that they're normal. You have no idea that you're. So I would do things such as touching doorknobs, like walking down the hallway of my house. I'd hit the front of the door and the back of the door, and, you know, bad OCD. I didn't know it was OCD, but I was in 7th grade, and I was doing that, walking down a hallway, and I missed one of them, and I was walking with my friend and I missed one, and I had to run back to the start and do it again. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It brings me luck." Just like that. I said it. And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, if I hit it both sides, it's good luck for me." And he looks at me, he's like, "Freak." Like, that's what he tells me. I'm like, whoosh, like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought everybody did that, you know, and that's how people had good luck. And so what I did, though, is I internalized that in my head, where I now do and say something, I know I can get you guys to say something, you know, as athletes, and drive a direction that I want to steer this conversation. So if I say something, I already know what you're going to say because I'm guiding you to say that. Well, if I know what you're going to say, I already have my next question cued, which I already know what your answer is. And so I can maneuver this, hit the front side of the doorknob, the back side of the doorknob, and play like a little thing in my head. I had no idea that people couldn't or don't do that. I didn't know. And I do it fast. And that's why I was kind of good in sales, is I would see a routine and I could play the routine. And that's why, like, coaching athletes, the reason why I coached, you know, 3,000 of them for my first 3 years for free is because I'm trying to understand these patterns.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when I think about, like, who would I like to talk to, I want to talk to people that help me, the thing I do that's this weird, freakish thing, and somehow, you know, like, advance or what do they do? And yeah, I think that those bizarre, weird people like that fascinate me, especially if they specialized in that craft. And sometimes, you know, like even Steve Jobs, who was, you know, a tyrant, he said things that just came out, you know, wrong. His behavior was incredibly inappropriate, but it was also because maybe his mind was somewhere way beyond where our minds were, maybe. Yeah. That to me is very fascinating. Older people, if they've specialized in a craft, I'm locked in.
Yeah. To me, like, one of the things that got me interested in podcasts was Tim Ferriss, and he basically wanted, his goal was to sit down with as many people who are specialists and the best in their sport, or the best in their whatever it was, and just find out how and what made them tick. And it's like it's still like
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like and I believe it's where like Tools of Titans come from, the book. So it's super interesting.
Yep.
So last one is basically, what's the biggest thing that annoys you in the gym? So you're in the gym and you see somebody, I don't know. I always use the example of chalking up the hands for press ups. I'm like,
you're a nice guy, Chris, but let's be brutally honest now. Like, what pisses you off in the gym?
What do you see and go?
One thing that you're like, oof.
So I really despise the yelling of and having that be a motivating factor. So when I see coaches screaming, and it's like screaming in the sense to try and create some level of motivation. I get it if they're excited and they're like pumped about the class, but that really I struggle with. I because my approach is different, and so it doesn't resonate with me. If someone yells at me like that, I feel like it's my dad talking to me and I'm 12 years old again, and I'm just going to cower and deliver mediocrity. I really struggle with that. But I also, one of the things that I feel that is also a bummer that I see in the gym is sometimes it's just time to be quiet. Let's not always like fill it with things. And I think that people get overwhelmed with too much information. Like when we were talking before the podcast, I said, when I do a running workout with a group and it's a recreational group, I will give them one running tip, biomechanic tip to think about. That's it. I'm not going to sit there while they're working their snatch and go, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that, blah, blah, blah. That person is lost. And there's a tendency, because a coach is insecure, to overwhelm them with this minutia that is wasting time. And that to me is it's a bummer, right? And I get it. They've heard a piece of information and they feel compelled to share that information. And what they really should be doing is, wait a minute, you heard a piece of information, but what you first as a coach should do is you should convert that into your own knowledge and then share it. Okay. And people are rushing to, when they hear a little sound bite and they're going, this is what I heard and we're doing it. And they're not bringing it in as information. That's why when I write workouts, most of the workouts I've done them. That's information, right? But if you read workouts that I've written, that's not knowledge, right? You've just picked up a piece of information. You're seeing things. You don't know what those workouts mean. Yeah. But once you do them, now you got real knowledge. Yeah. You know where the stimulus is. You know how to coach that workout. And that to me is really, but I always tell people this, and if people are listening, part of it is that, is there opportunity in this sport as a coach to coach at the highest level? And the answer is that absolutely there is, because there's a lot of mediocrity that surfaced to the top because a great athlete walked in the door. And if you want to be like the best in terms of coaching, I mean, this is an incredible opportunity because there's so much information. And if you're motivated to learn and you want to take that information and convert it into knowledge, then your approach needs to change. Meaning, look what I did. I had, in the first year, I was given an opportunity to coach Neil Maddox and Garrett Fisher and Jason Khalipa. And they, all went on to the games, 7 months later to get in the top 10. But that didn't mean I had a methodology. Yeah. And I didn't start charging. I didn't make one penny for 3 years. So 2.5 years after that is when I actually started. And what I did is I felt I had some ideas, but I needed to prove it out on a larger scale. And so, could I have made money after that? Of course I could have. but what would my sample size have been? How many people would I have been coaching? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to validate it, not just with 3 or 4 paying, customers. What I wanted to do is have 55 athletes at the CrossFit Games in 2015. And yeah, okay, I gave them weekly workouts for free, but you know what? My learning curve was compressed.
Yeah.
And it's the change of your mindset. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people want to bypass that learning curve and just spit out information, but they haven't converted it to knowledge yet.
Yeah.
And so that's where, if you take that time, just look at the coaches that are showing up at the CrossFit Games. And I'm friends with all of them, but could they advance themselves? Absolutely. But do they want to or need to, based upon where they are? And so that tells you that there are many, many opportunities to take somebody. Look at Roman Krenikov. He was a nobody. And you know what? I pulling him out of the weeds and giving him he had talent, but he wasn't, capable of winning European regionals, but he did eventually, and he is a talent. And those athletes are out there all the time. The problem is the Roman Krenikovs can't get access to a coach like that. They can't. Yeah. And so that's where, if you have some knowledge, you can take an athlete that you look and say, man, that athlete has potential. I can mold this person.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with Roman. Roman, that was the same thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and obviously Roman's now famous for his aerobic capacity as well. There's no, I wouldn't say there's any secret there. Like I've heard it on multiple occasions where athletes just say, "Oh, Roman's going to let Roman go on this one. This one's his." Do you know what I mean? Let him.
Look at Kristen Holte last year.
Yeah.
She came out here. I got to know her. She asked if I would be willing to help her, and I assessed the things that she was doing. And there was a substantial amount of opportunity for her. And she is incredibly talented. She's one of the most prolific athletes ever in the sport. And she went on last year. It was a dramatic improvement. And so part of it is it's really diving into where there is these opportunities, but you've got to come from a source of practical knowledge. And that's what I'm saying. There's a difference between the two. And if you don't have a sample size, that means that you just don't have the experience. And it goes back to the people that I want to meet. I want to meet people with experience because they know. Yeah. They know because they've done it versus someone who just read it in a textbook.
Yeah, love it. And again, I think that comes back to what we said right at the start. Just being able to get your message across to these people is more important than necessarily, I don't want to say more important than the knowledge, but being able to actually communicate with people and get them to do what's best for them. Right. Probably.
Well, like coaches, I mean, like you guys, you're very personable, and you care about people. I mean, coaches do. It has to be authentic, like that passion and that care. And you won't take advantage of them. You will never embarrass them. You'll never mock them. And that's a really important part of it because you're nurturing these people, but you're doing that portion quietly, right? It's just your personality. And I think that those things are important. That's why the yelling part, it's a contradiction to that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Love it. Chris, I've got to thank you for being on today. It was
Thanks, guys.
An absolute pleasure to sit down and talk to you. I feel like we went full Rogan on this one, and we got deep, which was amazing. Chris, is there any, if somebody does want to check you out, obviously agogeTV.com, is there any other sources to get in touch with you?
So agogeTV.com, and the people listening, look, I said it in this podcast, this is a great time for people to reach out to coaches and to get ideas. If you can send an email at info@agogeTV.com and if there's something that I have and it's, already written, I'll happily send it. If I don't, like, for example, if you want to climb Mount Everest, I don't have a training program for that, but I would happily provide content and not ask anything for it. I really do believe that the giving away of content creates a higher level within a sport. And what I want to do is I just want to be able to share that. So you can email at info@aerobic-capacity and that would be good. But also that would be the same place. Like I said earlier, we do a lot of community outreach. And so if there are, a program, or if you're a gym owner and you're looking for something, please, send in the note. I am incredibly grateful. I mean, being able to talk with you guys, and this was such an effortless conversation, but I'm grateful for what I'm able to do. And if I can share or give back, that since it really is an important thing for me, even like that United in Movement, for me, I'm grateful. We gave, $2,000 into that program. But part of it is that, we want people to come and show interest. If people aren't willing to make an effort for the asks, such as you guys doing this podcast, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Because I already have these projects and programs, right? We've got, 700 and something people that do my online training program that I've given to them for free. And so part of it is that you got to reach out. Like I said, if you want workouts, if you have hardship things, let me know. And I'm always open to that. I think that's why I do all my own seminars. I really like meeting the people and sharing the word. I really do. So yeah, aerobiccapacity.com. We give away free workouts also on the Instagram there. But
cool.
Let me know if I could help. But yeah, you guys, this was shockingly, I think it helped because you went to the seminar, but I think you guys are really easy going, man. This is like,
cheers, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. It's funny. We always say about the great conversations are the ones that are so effortless.
Yeah. And like I said, we couldn't thank you more for coming on and talking to us today. We've been, it was funny. We had Sean Woodland on recently, and all the people listening were making jokes about how happy I was and how excited I was. And I was like, "You see nothing yet. We've got Chris Hinshaw." I was like, so we've been super excited to get you on. And again, we appreciate it, and we appreciate everything you do for not just us today, but the CrossFit community. I think just how out there you've been and how you've shared your knowledge so openly with people. It's just pushing the CrossFit community forward leaps and bounds. So again, just want to say a big thank you to you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Cool. So again, let me just thank you everyone for listening. Again, check us out for reviews, 5-star reviews, YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, share, all the usual stuff, guys. Just again, it helps us get the podcast out there. And I think the amount of amazing take-home messages that has been in this podcast, I'm definitely going to have to listen to it back again and take some notes. Again, guys, thank you very much, and peace.